Good evening and welcome to Sex Addiction in the News on Facebook Live, Fridays at 5. I am Stacy Sprout, a licensed psychotherapist, certified sex addiction therapist, and author of a book about my own recovery called Naked in Public, a memoir of recovery from sex addiction and other temporary insanities. You will notice I have a special guest tonight here with us this evening. This is Sparky Sprout, and he joined the show because there was a viewer request. And so he will be with us here as long as he wants to be. If there's a fly in the room, we will have an interesting time. And thank you for joining me this evening and joining Sparky. I created this broadcast because I am passionate about destigmatizing the conversation about sex addiction in the public. This show is intended to be educational, created for anyone who is interested in what the world is saying about sex addiction. This is my 6th week of doing the show, and this was the hardest week. I was super busy, and I felt like I didn't have time to do the broadcast and sort of didn't really want to get to it. But when I sat down to do it and I started looking at the stories, I got excited all over again because there is so much good news happening in the world about sex addiction, and it's really a privilege to get to find it and share it because it's been years I've been tracking the news, and it's been pretty bad. So it's quite a time. So again, I am grateful to be here with you tonight. And I will, during the show tonight, I will be sharing one of my favorite recovery songs or recovery anthems. So I forgot to share that last week at the end, but I really appreciate the people who are watching and typed in your recovery songs because they are inspirational. I listened to some of them this week. And so if you want to share a song that you like in recovery, please type it into the comments box. And let's take a look at what is being said about sex addiction. Our headline news this evening involves Russell Brand. Russell appeared on the Today Show with Megyn Kelly, and I admit I had seen his name in the headlines and even shared a story in my newsletter. I send out a newsletter with information in it. I've done it for, I guess, a couple years now, stories related to sex addiction before I went to video webcast. Anyway, I did publish a story in there, a link to a story that he was open about his porn addiction, but watching this feature on the Today Show, which I will link on my YouTube channel, was eye-opening. If you didn't know, Russell Brand is one of the most famous comedians in the world, and he is an author and an actor. He did a comedy special called Messiah Complex, and in it he disclosed his struggles with alcohol, food, drugs, and sex. I find him to be clear, direct, and a powerful advocate for addiction awareness and recovery, including sex and porn addiction. He even spoke to British Parliament to advocate for humane legislation and treatment for addiction. And I find his message humble and inspiring. And I'm going to read some excerpts from the Today Show, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice because he's also incredibly funny. So here are some of the things that were said on the show. Megyn Kelly said to Russell Brand, "You talk openly about addictions to alcohol and drugs and sex and porn and your phone and food. You use those to mask what?" And Russell replied, "Oh, well, personally, what I think, Megyn, is that there's a great deal of pain unaddressed, a lot of unconscious happiness and unhappiness in the world, and a lot of unconscious happiness that the world is dealing with, and it manifests on an individual level, perhaps as an addiction or an attachment to anything. A lot of people are running on the energy of negativity, an attachment to sex, an obsession about what other people think of you. The reason I've written this book," so he wrote a book, "is that I believe it is possible for change, for people to be happy. I believe it is possible for people to be connected." Russell is referring to his newest book called Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions, published in October 2017. And that book is described as a guide to all kinds of addiction from a star who has struggled with heroin, alcohol, sex, fame, food, and eBay that will help addicts and their loved ones make the first steps into recovery. And Russell Brand has a quote about his book. He says, "This manual for self-realization comes not from a mountain, but from the mud." My qualification is not that I am better than you, but I am worse. He published another book in May 2010, earlier called My Bookie Wook, a memoir of sex, drugs, and stand-up. Megan asked, "How did you get it started? Because that is a lot to conquer." He said it was one day at a time. He owned having multiple addictions, mental health problems, and many flaws and character weaknesses, and found that none of the external solutions, including fame, glamour, or money, worked to help him feel better. He says, "We don't choose between having a program and not having a program. All of us are living by a program. In most cases, the unconscious program of our childhood, our conditioning, and our culture. We can liberate ourselves from these things," he says. "I meditate twice a day, every day, and in that meditative space, I am relieved of the constant thinking, the constant fear, the anxiety of being alive and not feeling like I'm good enough. Of course, the ongoing terror of death that lurks here." Megan said, "Do you fear death? To me, you seem fearless." And he answered, I'm really glad you think I seem fearless, because it's an act I'm putting on. I have quite a lot to fear. I worry about what other people think of me. I worry about my place in the world. I worry about whether or not we can live loving one another. I worry about whether I'm good enough, whether I look good enough, whether my body is good enough. Sometimes I worry about my teeth. I suppose the thing is, if I only identify with myself and what other people think of me and what I earn, all of those things are definitely going at death, if not before. So I have to have some other meaning in my life. And I wouldn't have that if it wasn't for this program. Without this positive program that makes me of service to other people, this other program takes over and turns me into a selfish little narcissist. Megan said, "Do you struggle with relapse, or do you wrestle with relapse?" And he said, "I think moment to moment, we have the opportunity in relationship to be loving and beautiful to one another, or to be cruel to one another, at a time when cruelty and danger, mad, crazy behavior is so prevalent in our culture. I suppose we have to recognize it in ourselves, moment to moment, because that we have control of. I can't control some of the crazy things that are going on in our planet, but I can control whether or not I speak to people with dignity and love. That choice I do have." So check out the show yourself to see, and again, I can't do his words justice in the way he conveys them, and there's a lot more funny stuff that he shares. I think what I really appreciate among the many things about what he says is, he's being seen as an addict. He's coming out openly as an addict of multiple addictions, and then he's asked, "Do you struggle with relapse?" And what he talks about is love and kindness, and that's his struggle. He struggles to be loving and kind. So, yeah, I really appreciated that story and his words. In Partners and Families of Sex Addiction, we feature a story from April 3rd, 2018 by Darcel Rocket, reporter for the Chicago Tribune, titled, "I Was Absorbed in Pornography for Hours and Hours, How Porn is Affecting Kids." It reads, "If liquor companies had vending machines outside their buildings, and to buy some, you had to press a button that asked, 'Are you 21? Yes or no?' Would you, as a parent, stand for it?" Anti-pornography advocates say the answer would be no, and the same thing should apply to online porn sites. 11 is the average age a child is first exposed to porn.